Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session, please join us for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Sullivan? Here. Commissioner Webb?
Here.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Here.
Commissioner Aquila?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here. Next is our agenda approval.
Move to adopt the agenda.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. Agenda is approved. Next, we have a presentation on the transient room tax.
Good evening, Commissioners. Suzanne Johnson from Assessment and Taxation, and our department's in charge of collecting transient room tax for the county. I have with me Alicia Sprague and Jolene Hartill, who are transient room tax rock stars. Not only have they put together an efficient way to collect and to administer this program, they are just fantastic at communicating with all of those that need to be signed up and pay. So anyway, I'm going to leave it up to them. And if you have any questions at the end, be happy to answer them.
Hi. So we're going to just kind of walk you through our process a little bit so you can get familiar with how we go about doing the collections, and then also kind of give you a perspective on where we're at so far with the collections for the year. So starting off, can I give you a little background, the evolution of how it came to be the way it is. As you can see, the ordinance has been amended several times since its inception in 1990. Most significant changes have occurred over the last 5 years, with the increase of the 2.5% that happened in 2014, which took it from a 7% transient lodging tax to 9.5%. And then, of course, the most recent was the countywide 1% tax, which was imposed in 2018. So transient room tax is a self-reporting. The collections are on a calendar year cycle due to the quarterly due dates. Makes it kind of challenging because the county runs on a fiscal year cycle. We begin the process of printing out and mailing the quarterly returns approximately a month prior to their due dates. That way it gives ample amount of time for the operators and the homeowners to fill out the returns and get them back to us with their payments timely. In order to process each return, we have to take the total gross rents, and then which they report, and then calculate the taxes owed. So, processing the returns. It's complicated. That's a picture of Alicia's desk. No, I'm just kidding. The time it takes to process a return varies depending on who's turning it into us and the amount of errors. We have owners, property managers, and intermediaries. So the property owner returns are pretty simple, usually because they're only reporting on one property. And they do have to also report to us how much of the rent is being collected by their intermediary, VRBO, Expedia, Airbnb, so forth. The returns that are filed by the property managers get a little more complicated because they're in charge of operating several properties, and so they're reporting on several properties. And then, of course, the most complicated is the returns that we get from the intermediaries. And processing those returns can take anywhere from a few minutes to days, depending on how complicated they are. And then, of course, the lack of information that the intermediaries can actually provide to us because of the Federal Stored Communication Act. So what that is it's a federal law that, in short story, is that it prevents the intermediaries from telling us whose money it is that we're getting. They're giving us a check, it's a total amount due, but they are not allowed to tell us how much of that money is for each location because they cannot divulge the income for the private property owners. They can for motels and hotels, but they can't for private property owners. So that is why we have all of the operators and owners report to us how much to expect in rent from the intermediaries, because when we get the check, then we balance it to all of the returns that we're getting and tick and tie that money. In addition to that, the intermediaries such as Expedia, they have several subsidiaries, so that also collect and remit to us, so hence why that one's complicated.
Is it possible to ask a question about that? Do you want us to wait until the end? What's your pleasure, Madam Chair?
I prefer that you write down your questions and ask at the end, but if it seems that it's important to ask it now, I mean, I'm not hard and fast about it, but I think it's more efficient because sometimes things are covered.
Well, but this particular issue seems to be treating, we had a big discussion today at the Citizen Advisory Committee about how do we decide what's commercial activity. And so we've got homeowners who are receiving money, which seems to me like a commercial activity, and yet the laws don't cover that. The laws haven't expanded. And so if we can put that in a basket or something and ask council or somehow look into the idea.
That should wait.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so moving on the delinquencies, once all of the returns have been processed, then we start working on the delinquencies. So we have a schedule for if the timely payment isn't made by the end of the month, then the payment is considered delinquent, and the day of delinquency, we begin accruing a 1.5% interest. 30 days from the delinquency is the 10% penalty, 60 days, 15% penalty, 90 days, the delinquency and a determination is then done, and then we record a lien. And then if it goes beyond that, then we have to start a foreclosure process. So one of the things that we've been asked is, how do you know you have everyone, and how do you find them? And when we have time, when time allows, we put on our private investigator caps, and we go out and we research with advertisements that are occurring on Facebook, VRBO, HomeAway, Airbnb, and we try to, it gets a little tricky, but they try to pinpoint what property it is that's actually being rented, because often the location isn't divulged on the advertisement, but pictures often are that give you an idea of what street it might be on, or if there's an owner's name that we can use in our assessment records to try to search and find someone. And then it usually varies on how much time it takes to research and find. Sometimes it just takes a few minutes, and sometimes it can take a couple of days of looking around. But so far, we've found 45 accounts that we didn't know about just since January of this year. So we've got some pretty savvy researchers in our office. So once we find a property, our first step in the process is, of course, to contact the homeowner and educate them on how the transient lodging tax works. Then we request that they register with us and provide us with at least 3 years worth of rental records in order for us to calculate the taxes that are owed. If they haven't been renting for 3 years, then of course we just request that they give us what they have. If we're unsuccessful in reaching the property owner, then we use the standard determination process to calculate what we estimate they owe us, and that's based off of the earliest rental evidence that we can find. A lot of times we'll find that information by like when the first review was made, and we can also kind of look and see when they first started advertising, how long their listing's been out there. So then we take the average nightly rent times 3 nights a week, every other week, plus cleaning fees, and then we try to estimate the taxes they would owe us, and we send them a notice. Upon receipt of that notice, the property owner has 15 days until the tax determined becomes delinquent, and then we go back and revert to our standard delinquency schedule. So all written in the ordinance, but this is the ordinance being put into action. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the fun numbers that we've been able to accumulate so far. The number of accounts that we're currently collecting and remitting transient room tax is 1,085, and we've kind of broke down for you where those accounts are throughout the county. We anticipate that the numbers will increase due to the growth in the industry and, of course, our discovery when we locate more. In addition to the collections, we also facilitate and work closely with the other departments for the permitting process. And that would be for the ones that are in the unincorporated rural areas. So prior to January 1 of 2019, we saw about a 32% growth in transient lodging tax collections. And this would, of course, just been in unincorporated Clatsop County because that's all we were collecting for at that time. And what's also interesting is the increase of 2.5% that happened in 2014 didn't slow anything down. As you can see, the industry still grew. So right now, just to kind of recap, the unincorporated Clatsop County rate is 10.5%, which is your 9.5 plus the countywide 1%. And then the rate for the incorporated cities is 1%. At the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th, 2019, the collections that we received were mainly from just first quarter 2019. That's that whole room taxes on a calendar year and counties on a fiscal year. And this graph shows how much we had in collections as of the June 30th, 2019 date. And we've got it broken apart there for you to be able to see how much is coming from each jurisdiction. This chart kind of breaks it out a little bit more for you. So because we also in charge of keeping track of how much of that money needs to go into the jail operating fund, then allocated for tourism dollars because the law requires that 70% of it go towards tourism. And then we have county infrastructure, general fund account, and then of course the total. So our first distribution didn't seem like a lot just because we had only gone from January 1 to June 30th. And so in that amount of time, we had pretty much only collected first quarter, which is your slower time of the year for vacation rentals. But this is what we distributed to the cities for their portion of the tourism dollars for this first, we call it a turnover. So as of August 23rd, when we pulled our last set of numbers from the time period from July 1, which is the start of the new 2019-20 fiscal year, up until August 23rd, which is collections for second quarter, transient room tax rentals, as you can see, the numbers substantially shot up. So a lot more activity are occurring because the summer months haven't quite started yet. We will be collecting for that quarter this October 15th. It just kind of happens to land about the same time property taxes are coming out and due. And once again, this kind of breaks out for you guys. This is just the money that's been collected from July 1 until the cutoff when we put this report together was August 23rd. This will be rentals occurring second quarter mainly. And interesting, the grand total so far that we've generated for the jail operating funds since January 1 up until August 23rd is $167,661.22.
Where?
So that's pretty much everything that we got compiled for you guys so far. And of course, we have a lot of information for the public on our website if they're interested in learning about the permitting process and the transit lodging tax. All of our amendments to our ordinances, everything is available on our website, as well as somebody can just pick up the phone and call us.
Questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I thank you for the presentation, the information. Thank you for your diligence and your hard work in doing what needs to be done in order to get hold of this unwieldy issue. I started out having a neighbor who was a donor to Oregon Coastal Shores Coalition and vehemently opposed to transient occupancy, and then all of a sudden he decided it was a pretty good idea, and he started doing it a lot and living somewhere else and didn't report to you. And so I kind of followed up behind and I ratted him out, and it brought home to me in a painful way that people can get led astray when they see that there's money that they might not have to report. So when I look at the Stored Communication Act, I am reminded of my beloved neighbor's experience when he got tempted beyond his ethical boundaries not to report to the legitimate taxing jurisdiction. So this stored communications, what we're seeing is businesses are required to share information so that they pay their fair share of taxes. This looks like it's opposite to me. It looks to me as though individuals who are conducting commercial activities, even through a third party, are somehow shielded from the accountability that a hotel or motel business would face. Am I missing something, or is that, help me understand this, please.
So the intention of the Stored Communication Act was really more of, there's an online platform, so they have a lot of people's private information. So it's trying to protect online companies sharing private information. That's really what it comes down to. And this happens to fall into it. That's just what that is. So VRBO, Airbnb, all these entities are saying, because of this federal law, we can't provide you with our customers' income information. So it's kind of a interesting little spot they're in, because they're trying to protect also their customers' private information being shared. So yes, with the businesses, it doesn't fall under that in that case, and I can't speak more to that. I know that Expedia shares their business's information.
Well, it occurs to me that cities and counties, local jurisdictions, are being unfairly treated by this, and I wonder if we should take action to urge our federal Congress people, senators, to act to what I think is close a loophole.
And to clarify, we are getting the money from
we are
VRBO.
getting the money.
They're just not, they just can't tell us what portion is specifically your neighbors.
Right.
So they collect the revenue, they collect the tax dollars from their tenants, because keep in mind it's the tenant's tax, not the homeowners.
Right.
They collect all of it, and then they remit it to the county, but we then have to do the creative accounting of gathering the information and balancing it to that check amount.
That's why on the,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Finding that it does reconcile to your records.
Not always, but that comes down to also keep in mind that you're having a bunch of homeowners who don't necessarily have a tax or accounting background trying to fill out a form. I spend a lot of time on the phone walking people through how to fill the form out. Also, you deal with a difference in accounting. A lot of the time, a homeowner does it on a cash accounting basis. I made the money today, I'm gonna give it today, but it's really a booking for, down the road versus, but then VRBO does it more of an accrual. It's when they actually physically stayed. So we end up with some differences, but we do have the option to audit if needed VRBO, but that goes through a whole nother process. So
are you seeing that people are not necessarily trying to avoid paying the tax, but
No.
that they don't understand exactly how to do that?
I would say in my experience, that's most of the case.
Okay.
Most of the time, I give them a call and they say, I didn't realize. There are people out there that are avoiding it. It happens, but I wouldn't say it's the majority of them.
Oh, good.
as with any process, when you're first starting out, the majority of the time initially is just spent on education. And then once you finally get everybody on the same page, then it smooths out and it runs with the minimal amount of speed bumps along the way. And I think that's what we're kind of experiencing now at this point. When the 1% was first initiated, we were all spending a lot of time on the phone explaining how it wasn't the homeowner's tax, that it is the tenant's tax, that it's the visitor to the community that is paying this tax, and educating them on how to report. And Airbnb does not send us the money. They are not collecting it and remitting it, but VRBO is. And so the property owner is working with that accounting as well. So, but we are getting to, I think, a lot less bumpy road right now with the homeowners and the property managers.
We are enjoying a collaboration with each one of the jurisdictions. Also, we're sharing more information, so that's been a real help also.
I actually had a follow-up question if we're done with that one, unless you
Go
want
ahead,
to.
I'll wait.
Okay, good. Thank you, because you're kind of restoring my faith in human nature. I appreciate that. You say that you do an average night rent. I wonder if that's summer rates or winter rates, because those are, is it weekend, weekday? I mean, how do you
Average of
determine?
all of it. That's why we average it out. So we go in, and keep in mind it's based on information we can find. So I go in there and I look over the time frame that they've been renting. They charge during the winter maybe only $99 a night, but during the summer they charge $150, and then on the weekend they only charge $100. And you add all that up, and then you find the average, and then you use that. And the reason is absolutely, they don't always rent the same amount during the summer as they do in the winter. But I also don't have that information. I don't have their books. So that's only used in the event that they are not responding. We do everything we can to contact them, get their books, and actually fully audit them. But if we can't, that's the last resort. It's a standard determination process we use for everybody.
If there's a way that we can make all of this easier for staff by just having required reporting in a consistent format, wouldn't that just be dandy? I don't know if we can get there from here, but not likely, theoretically possible in an ideal world, but thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you. So I have a couple things. One is the Airbnb folks that are using Airbnb, are they submitting the taxes themselves rather than it being sent back through Airbnb?
Yes.
And hadn't there been a talk earlier about that maybe nationally or statewide there was going to be some litigation regarding this? Has that progressed at all, or is that something they found they don't need to do, or?
There was just was it last week or this week? This week, a judgment came down in Multnomah County, and everyone's kind of waiting to see how it shakes out. But
It was City of Portland.
yeah, excuse me, City of Portland, but in Multnomah County Circuit Court. So we'll see.
Well, I certainly appreciate the attempt to protect our personal data. If you've seen the Netflix movie, The Big Hack, it's really interesting. But is this also kind of the difference between, because I work in hospitality, and there's no doubt that my boss will pay these taxes, and everybody knows where they are to come and get it if they don't. So isn't this kind of walking the line between what is commercial property and what is residential? Is that part of the problem?
Well, I don't really get into that, and what I kind of always tell people is that when it comes to transient room tax for the Clatsop County, it doesn't matter if you're renting a tent, you're renting a hotel, you're renting a house, a trailer, your yard, it's still owed, because when that tourist comes into Clatsop County, they have to pay that lodging tax. So regardless, as far as commercial, or we don't really get into that differentiation, that's more of a land use question.
Okay, so that's how you're defining it, is
Yeah.
if you're renting this on a short-term basis,
Right.
this is what you owe.
Yep.
Okay. But you see my point.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have permission to have it as a vacation rental, they still have to pay the tax
Because they rented it.
because they rented it.
As they
Right,
rented
that
it.
tax was due, because it's not the homeowner, it's not the property owner or the hotel owner's tax, it's the tenant. It's the tourist who came here. They owe it regardless of where.
Oh, no, I understand that. I
Yeah, so
understand that.
that's why we
I
collect it.
I just recently heard a story about somebody's neighbor who, he was talking to the people that are renting this house for $3,200, and they think they can get $8,000 next year. So, I mean, that's a pretty doggone good profit. And I don't know if that's crossed over to the line of commercial interests rather than residential at that point. That's not for you guys to deal with.
Whole other issue. Is this microphone on? Is it on? Yeah. That's a whole other issue.
Madam Chair, if I just may,
I think Commissioner
that's what we
Webb had a
that's what we
question.
discussed earlier today, Commissioner Sullivan. So I'll be reporting on that.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, marvelous.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I have several. I understand from other counties that, that there are consultants who identify for those counties what the folks who are flying under the radar. Have you all explored that? I've spoken with several counties, and they're very, very happy with those consultants they're using. So,
We have looked at different software. We've had this last week, we had someone do a presentation because we're willing to look at anything to make our job more streamlined and efficient. But I can tell you without a doubt in my mind, my staff is way ahead of those people. They really are. They just know. It's what they do. We're collectors, and we're doing it. So I haven't found anything that's better than them.
I would just like to add to that, there is software out there, but the software doesn't know, oh, I recognize that house. I know that they live over on Alder Street. And so having that personal knowledge of your county and where people are makes it go that much further. And then in addition, we run into the problems where Gearhart and Seaside both have the same zip code. They're 97138. What is within the city? What is unincorporated? What's the city of Seaside? What's the city of Gearhart? So those are things that our staff is aware of where the software isn't.
The counties I've talked to, it's not software that they're using, it's actually paying a consultant.
But the people that they're hiring are using that software is the issues that come up. So it works better in a big county where there's small small areas of zip codes. But here, knowing the county is just absolutely critical for getting this done.
It's rural counties who I've been talking to.
Social media has helped us tremendously.
And to add to that, a lot of the time, these people that you're, working with they're like the finance department. They're not necessarily property tax department. So we actually have access to use different things. So different tools. We're just, not only are we, collecting transient room tax, we're collecting property taxes. I can open up an app and look right at the house and know exactly where it is, web maps. So we just have a lot more tools at hand than some of the other counties might have.
Good. Another question is, in doing assessments, does this issue ever impact your assessed value of a home?
Well,
I don't have anything to do with the assessed value, I can tell you that.
Kathleen's question about the commercial, there would be an impact there if it was deemed to be a commercial operation. But currently, I would say no.
So do you do your assessments based on the zoning classification of the property?
We're doing the assessment based on the structure and the land value. But if it was a commercial operation, then we would maybe consider as one of our ways of coming up with the value using the income.
Does, the county allows in-home occupations, I believe. Am I right?
Well, we don't have any business licensing.
Okay, but
we probably have some ordinance.
you could have, for instance, you could have a room in your house where you did accounting for people that could come. I think
That would
that's,
be a land use question, I believe that would be.
okay, so I think that's allowed. That would be an in-home occupation.
No, that's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that assessed value is usually determined on the ability, it's a pro forma issue, it's on the ability of the home to generate rental income.
And that would be highest and best use, and if that was a commercial operation, that would be what we were looking at, but we are not looking currently at these as being that.
the only time that pops into my mind where it might have increased a person's property taxes is where we didn't know it was a dwelling. they advertised it as a vacation rental, and they made living space somewhere that we didn't have on the tax roll. That has happened, where we find an ad for a vacation rental, and it was above someone's garage that we just had as, on the roll as a part of a garage, but it was actually a finished living space with a bedroom and a bathroom and, things like that. There's the occasional where we not only find a vacation rental, but we also find admitted property. But that's not the intention of going out and finding vacation rentals. It just,
So those, in other words, you're talking about occasions where someone has not permitted
Correct.
an ADU,
Yes.
basically, in their
Yeah.
home. Yeah, that's,
that happens.
that, indeed. I guess I'm with Commissioner Thompson about this, the whole issue of the Stored Communication Act issue. Are you all talking to AOC or anybody like that about this issue?
I think your board, we discussed this last fall, was it last spring? There was a thought of pursuing, and in fact, last year, we did send because we couldn't get the information from Verbo, we assessed penalties against the property owners because we didn't know who had paid. And basically, Verbo's bigger than us, and they can spend a lot more money on attorneys. So we were waiting to see what happened in the legislative session and also what happened with Multnomah County and City of Portland, because they're bigger and have a larger staff. And as I say, there was just a decision that came down this week. But
What was that decision? I mean, what?
I haven't actually had a chance to read it yet, but I can get it and pass it out to you all. I think, limited some of the definitions on the stored communication, but probably didn't go as far as everybody would like it to.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to thank you for all your hard work. It sounds like you're very busy at keeping track of all of this.
And it's helping the county a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have proclamation. And we have with us Minerva Alvarez. Would you like to come forward and? Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Minerva Moulin, and I work in the Lower Hispanic Council. And we are here just to say thank you for the proclamation you are doing tonight for us and our community. And we are very glad you are doing this for us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I will announce the proclamation. The Board of County Commissioners for Clatsop County, Oregon, in the matter of proclaiming the period from September 15th through October 15th to be National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas the term Hispanic or Latino refers to a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin who can be of any race, any ancestry, or any ethnicity. And whereas the United States has always drawn its strength from the contributions of a diverse people, and whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is a time to recognize the contributions made and the important presence of Hispanic and Latino Americans to the United States, and whereas Hispanic Americans have played a prominent and important role in our national heritage, and our Hispanic American residents lift up our communities and our economy as entrepreneurs, executives, and small business owners. And whereas a significant segment of the more than 37,000 people living in Clatsop County are Hispanic, and we honor the rich heritage of our Hispanic community. Now therefore, be it thereby resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Clatsop County proclaim September 15th through October 15th be set aside as National Hispanic Heritage Month in Clatsop County. We call upon public officials, educators, and all residents to observe this month with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs to share in this special annual tribute by learning and celebrating the generations of Hispanic and Latino Americans who have positively influenced, enriched our nation and our society. Dated this 11th day of September, 2019.
Thank you.
May I ask her some questions?
Yes?
May I put you on the spot, Minerva?
Well, I'm here.
I know that you work with the Lower Columbia Hispanic Council, and I'm just wondering if you would, I know that you recently, Jorge has moved on to another opportunity, but is there anything you would like to say about your organization? Do you have any events coming up or things that you hope to have happen in the near future?
Yes, we are in a transition to hire a new executive director. And we don't have very many activities this month, but we have one in November, the Day of the Dead. It's going to be in the Maritime Museum here in Astoria. Everybody's welcome to come and share our culture and enjoy with us hot chocolate and bread. I don't know if anybody tried it before, but you are welcome to come. And that's what I have to say.
It's going to be at did you say the Maritime Museum?
Yes, November 2nd.
Oh, okay, wonderful. The what?
Oh, the Barbie Center.
The Barbie Maritime
Okay,
Center.
sorry.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other question? Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Do you want a picture with us?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
All of us?
Yeah.
All right.
Whole team.
All right.
Is there something we can do about the fact that it is freezing in this room?
Turned it up.
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Great. I'm sure that's a good one.
I don't know how. But not with a coin dropping.
Now it's time for business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. First, we have Eric Halperin.
Hello, Chairperson Nebeker and Commissioners. I'm here today as a citizen of Clatsop County and a representative of Indivisible North Coast, Oregon, because I'm concerned about the climate crisis and ask that our county be part of the climate solution. I would like to invite everyone, commissioners, staff, and the public, to attend a free screening of the National Geographic film Paris to Pittsburgh on Sunday, September 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Columbian Theater in Astoria. Following the film, we will have an open community discussion, which will include a presentation from Dr. Frank Granshaw, a climate scientist who has been an instructor at Portland State University and Portland Community College, and has been an observer at the United Nations climate conferences. and also a presentation from a local alternative energy educator, Stephen Schumacher, who lives in Napa. Paris to Pittsburgh explores the very real social and economic impacts of climate change across our nation. The film features local leaders as well as everyday Americans presenting their stories of climate-related strategies and resiliency. Clatsop County should be part of the climate solution. Also this month, there will be global climate strikes taking place around the world and right here in Clatsop County. Join us on Friday, September 20th in Seaside at the Big Orange Chair from noon to 1 p.m. for the Global Climate Strike Rally. Join us again on Friday, September 27th in Astoria on Marine Drive at 16th Street from noon to 1 p.m. for a second Global Climate Strike Rally. This global climate strike movement started with one lone 15-year-old Swedish girl named Greta Thunberg, who walked out of school on a Friday in August 2018, sat in front of the Swedish Parliament building, and held a handmade sign that said "Striking for Climate." Every Friday she showed up alone until eventually other students started to join in. Lots of other students. In March of this year, an estimated 1.4 million students around the world left school to strike for climate. This youth-led Fridays for Future movement continues to grow. And now these young people are asking us to join them. They need our help. Their future depends on it. Please come to our rallies. Please come to the film Paris to Pittsburgh and join a community discussion. It's time we give our attention to the most serious challenge of our time and create climate solutions before we run out of time, as I have just now done. And if I may, in the words of the now 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, our house is on fire, we should act like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask that you give those dates and places to our...
You have a flyer.
Oh.
You have a flyer right
Oh,
here.
but is everything that you mentioned in this?
My entire submission is your second page.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I just saw that. Thank you. Next, we have Reverend Bill Van Nostrand.
Well, I thought that this was a time for hearing people except for public hearing items, but I'd be glad to speak.
Are you speaking on the tobacco retail license?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Any
So
opportunity
you
to
will,
speak, you'll accept?
you will have an opportunity. Okay, next we have Theodore
I'm
Tom.
happy to speak whenever given.
So to speak.
So to speak.
Next we have Theodore Thomas.
For the record, my name is Theodore Thomas. I live at 398 Atlantic, Astoria, Oregon. Recently, a friend of mine, I'm sorry, I got to warn you, this is not a happy story. Recently, a friend of mine who's a freelance writer and has had a spotty income for his 15 years of residency in Astoria was told by his landlord that the rent would be increased for his 11 by 14 bathroom down the hall, no kitchen apartment would be increased to $500 a month, which, as many of you, would know is outrageous. Subsequent to that rent increase, he couldn't pay. He left. He's now homeless and living in his car. The reason why is actually an economic question. It's Economics 101. It's a classic example of market failure. What we have here is equivalent to a pack of scalpers going down to the Liberty and buying every ticket for a very popular concert, let's say the Rolling Stones or something that doesn't date me too badly, music-wise, and then turning around and saying, taking the $20 tickets and marking them up to $200. And if they sell 10% of those tickets, they break even, and every ticket after that that's just pure profit. So they're taking an existing resource, they're marking it up to fantastic prices, and reselling it. And then when the band gets here and they see that half the theater is empty, they're going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? This is, they don't like us? Well, that's not the case. The case is there's plenty of housing, as the county's $100,000 study on housing proved. We have more housing than we have people. This is a fact. This has been established. And we have homeless people on the streets of all of our towns like we have never had before in the history of our community. This is a market failure. What has happened is these operators, and I won't give them the credibility of saying that they're entrepreneurs, they're not. They're simply getting in between homeowners and legitimate renters, converting housing units into short-term rentals, marking up the prices, and removing those units from the housing market. The simple law of supply and demand will tell you that if you remove units, you're going to increase the prices. Secondly, anybody sitting on a piece of property is going to be looking at their neighbors saying, why am I not making as much money as that guy over there? And they're going to raise their rents with that. Thirdly, these operators go right to there. It's, in closing, let me just say, you can't build your way out of this. The more units you build, the more will go to Airbnb. You can't tax your way out of it. They will evade these taxes, and let's say you do catch them, they'll simply pay them, and it'll continue. You have to regulate them. You have to ban whole unit short-term rentals.
Thank you. Next we have, I'm having difficulty reading this. Julia? Okay, so you want to speak during the public hearing? Okay. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Move adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All those in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Consent calendar is approved. Now it's time for Commissioners' liaison reports. Commissioner Sullivan?
Oh, okay. Well, this afternoon, we had the Westport North Coast Regional Solutions team met with various people to discuss strategy for the opportunities we see coming up in Westport. And part of the things that we discussed was for the area, there's many different things that they're looking at that we've all, excuse me, I've got a cough drop in my mouth. Transportation, park development, boat landing improvements, water infrastructure, waste infrastructure. And so we're just at the beginning of this, and it's going to be a multi-year project, and more news to come later. But it was just the initial conversation with everybody at the table, or at least the preliminary people at the table, to talk about that. It's a good meeting. I have been, I'm so happy to not be sick anymore, but I was, I listened to the Board of Forestry meeting online, and it's good news this year about the fire season. We have not suffered the catastrophic fires the state of Oregon has had in the past few years, and they're just keeping their fingers crossed that will continue. One thing that I was impressed with is they mentioned Clatsop County twice when they did a story on the health of the forest, that because we're in the mouth of the river, and you know, there was one little insect that has never been seen in North America before or something like that, and they discovered it and tracked it down to see what it was. And then there was also another report on an invasive plant that they hadn't seen before. They were able to get there and take care of it. And so I talked to, I gave Margane Allen a call. She was the person that was kind of leading this. And there is information about invasive insects, invasive species, plants, and there's, excuse me, she gave me some links that I will give to Teresa, and we can get them up. There's a hotline, there's different things, because it's important that we keep an eye on this. And I know that many different people in the county in all different levels, farmers, soil and water conservation, foresters, and just residents are looking at that. So it's a good resource, and I wanted to pass that along. Another thing about that, during the one of the concerns that was brought up under the FDLIC report by Commissioner Yamamoto was with the Nehalem River Scenic Waterway. There is a lot of knotweed, Japanese knotweed, it's along the river there, and they were at the, that is something that they can address. Even though it's considered a state scenic waterway now, invasive species and whatnot can be addressed and be treated as part of the management. It's, as I was told, the Japanese knotweed is now in management phase of things. They know that it's here to stay, but they're just trying to manage it, much like the Scotch broom. Also on the report, on the meeting, they had a report on water on the Siskiyou, I'm not saying it right, down Siskiyou, and it's in terms of climate change, they found some pretty alarming water temperature raises and whatnot, and you might want to go on to the Board of Forestry's website, and you can watch the entire 7 hours of this meeting, but packed full of information, but you can skip ahead too. Tomorrow, and I know Commissioner Thompson will speak of the AOC meeting, but there's also an environmental justice task force meeting. That's a task force that's been appointed by the governor, and they travel around the state and talk about different issues, environmental and health concerns, and that's going to be meeting Friday at the Patriot Hall in 207, P207 at Clatsop Community College from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on September 13th. And one more thing, I guess I'll say it now, this is the anniversary of 9/11, and just makes one pause when we remember that day. But it also makes me sad that the war in Afghanistan has gone on for 18 years, the longest war the United States has been involved in. And I think the tragedy of that day continues. So I just wanted to say that in passing.
Commissioner Webb?
Very eloquent. You're going to talk about the meeting on Friday?
Heck yeah.
Okay. The Northwest Housing Authority has met several times recently in an effort to once again improve its reporting to the public. This is an issue that I feel real strongly about, and the two liaison committees that I am attached to on your behalf, both the WorkSource Oregon Committee, the Workforce Development, and Housing. I have been successful in sitting down with their budget folks and their directors to talk about improving their public reporting of their budgets, so that we're not presented with a matrix of unidentifiable acronyms, and also encouraging them to to be a little bit more vigorous in their performance measures. And so we've had extra meetings on that, and the other counties sitting at the table have approved of that effort, and it's something I will report further on in the future. I'd like to remind everybody that the forestry tour this year is October 2nd. It is not really a forestry tour. Instead, it's very exciting. It's a tour of the Hampton Mill. And if you have never been to the Hampton Mill, I absolutely encourage you to go on this tour. It is fascinating. And one of my constantly articulated songs is that I wish we could get every high school student, male and female, in Clatsop County to tour the forests, the working forests, and some of our mills, because the kind of popular assumption that the people who work in the mills are lifting 500-pound weights and operating forklifts is not the way it is, folks, either in the forest or in the mills. Most of them are sitting behind computer screens. And so this is the Hampton Mill tour will really highlight those exciting things. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Quila.
I attended the Fair Board meeting last night, and they opted not to go ahead with the concreting of the main floor in the exhibit hall. They decided just logistically moving that dirt in and out was just too much of a project. They also have a bond coming up next year. So they want to put off major projects like that until they pass the bond. And then they're also looking at some other things like building a new structure out there. So they're putting that off at this time. They also had the plane, model plane group that's out there. You often see them flying the model planes. They met with them too. They're trying to get an agreement with them. I know in the past they've been doing some exchange for services in order to use the facilities, and they're going to kind of work out a new agreement with them. And then they also decided to close the disc golf course out there. They've had some issues, I think, conflicts with use out there, so they're going to decide to sell that equipment to the Fort Stevens group, which has just started their disc golf course, and they're managing it and advertising it very well. So I know that they're very excited of growing that activity out at the state park. So those were the major things that happened at the.
So does that make it an 18-hole disc golf course?
I don't know what they opt to do. I don't know what they're opting to do with it, but they did elect that they wanted to sell the equipment to Fort Stevens, and I don't know what they'll end up ultimately creating out there.
And I also note that I saw the RFP for the old farmhouse.
Yeah.
That's finally going to be.
Now that is
Friday.
The photographs in the
Friday.
paper made it look wonderful.
It is a fabulous structure. I hope somebody will.
Hope so too. So
Grab it.
Friday is the auction, yeah. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Well, this discussion about transient occupancy tax and when is a housing unit a commercial activity and when is it a residence is something that we discussed from 10 this morning until about 1:45 at the Arch Cape Community Design Review, the revision of the comp plan. And it's a core issue, not only along the coastlines where the view sheds are, but really it impacts the housing all over Clatsop County. And so we'll be reporting on that. It's the 19th, right, Director Hendricks?
Yeah, this is the countywide. We got 4 o'clock, and it's in room 430 at
in room 430 at the 800 Exchange Building on the 19th of this month. It's a Thursday. So folks who are interested in that, I think, are welcome to come. We saw more public participation than members of the committee and staff, which is always exciting. You want to have a community meeting like that. So that was really wonderful. There's a meeting too on November 19th, the Cascades to Coast Landscape Collaborative meeting. I'm giving this ahead of time. It's when most of us are at the Association of Oregon Counties. But the whole idea of collaborating and getting our input into the recreational activities, they're having a speaker series. I've got a bunch of information about that. I signed up today for a Community Oregon Expo because it unites rural and urban Oregon. When we hear the concerns about global climate change, and we saw what happened in the legislature with kind of the abyss between various people's point of view about it, it's such a compelling argument that we are all on the team, because I don't know anybody who isn't concerned about the changes in the climate. And I've just come back from visiting that climate economist. It's fresh with me. How do we do this as a team so that everyday Oregonians are reassured that they can live their lives and not sink into poverty and despair, that businesses continue to operate, and that we save the planet? Because we can't pick one. We have to do all of that. So I have information about that as well. I got a bunch of other information. I'll wait for the good of the order. I have a request. I just want to give you a heads up on this. I'm just lately back in town, so I apologize for not doing more liaison with my colleagues. Linda Kozlowski from the Nehalem Bay Emergency Volunteer Corps, you may know, sits on the board for the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. And because they've had some financial, I want to call it slippage, which will happen in organizations but isn't acceptable, there's some thought in the legislature that Dogami should be divided up and scattered. I'm of the opinion that that would not serve the interests of Oregonians as we prepare for dealing with the impacts of climate change and the impacts of catastrophic events. So my request is going to be, during good of the order, that we as a body send a letter that supports Dogami continue as a unified entity to do that work for protecting us, and that they have some strict financial accountability. Because I think the legislature is absolutely right that they have to be accountable, they have to manage their budget, but I think we're all going to be better served if Dogami continues as one unified agency. So I'm going to request that we send that letter, and I'd like you to think about that. Thank you. I have more, but I'll wait.
Thank you. County Manager's report.
Just a couple things. The month of September is Suicide Awareness Month, and so I just wanted to make that announcement. And so it's also Emergency Preparedness Month. I have left on your dais, as well as some copies if anybody else wants some, a budget in brief. So basically it takes the 520 plus page budget document and it summarizes it in approximately 22 pages. So hopefully somebody will be able to have more time to read that document. It can also be found online. And if you have questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you to Nicole, who put a wonderful article in the newspaper about our new juvenile director, Kelly Broughton. We're very excited to have him on board with us now, and Greg has officially retired. And just wanted to also make an announcement that on September 19th, Thursday, from 10 to 12, the 800 offices from the second floor to the fourth floor will be closed. We will be going through staff training, and so none of those departments will be available.
What was that date again?
Thursday, September 19th, from 10 to 12. The community development and building codes departments will still be open.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time for public hearing on ordinance 2019-03. Staff? What did you do to your?
Oh, it's too much,
Looks like a mouse thing to me.
it's too much typing.
Sorry.
Good evening, I'm Mike McNichol, Clatsop County Public Health. I'm not sure what this part, I'm supposed to read the public hearing?
Just announce what the ordinance is about that you want passed and what the high points of it are.
Okay. So as you know, we've been talking about tobacco retail licensing for the last year and a half. The one in front of you is one that we've vetted with you in the past, also ran it through county council, and the high points of those is that it allows Clatsop County Public Health to license retail tobacco sellers and have an annual license of $350 a year, which would give us permission, if adopted, to inspect and make sure those facilities are following Tobacco 21 rules. And also, the other highlight is it does have a flavor ban, so that you cannot purchase flavored products for your Juul or other e-cigarettes, which is actually ahead of what appears that some of the states are going to do. So we're actually already thought of this, and we're moving forward on our own on that. So, any questions?
I had one. I love that you had enforcement. How did you come by the scale of the fines? I mean, do you have any research, or did you just kind of think that was a good idea?
So this, we based that on some of the work so we've been able to work with a national tobacco group that's given us advice on how others have done it. We've also looked at how other counties have done this. So it's based on some of that work.
Real teeth.
It's got some teeth in it, yeah.
Thank you.
It's great to know that we're out ahead.
Well, if you've been paying attention to the news recently, the vaping has now really been pretty intense. We actually had the first death in Washington just yesterday, so it's coming home to roost with the vaping, with 450 some odd victims of this strange lung disease. They still can't figure out exactly what it's caused by. I just read a story on CNN on the front page that a 16-year-old or 18-year-old who's vaping for a year and a half has lungs of a 70-year-old, and he may never be able to wrestle again, and he was a lettered wrestler. That's what the truth of this stuff is, that we don't know what the long-term effects are.
Am I correct? I thought I saw a chart recently where there's been a death in Oregon as well.
Yeah, we're not sure if it's the same. It hasn't been, that's what was reported. We don't know if exactly what it's caused from, but it was from vaping, but we're not sure what kind and what they were vaping.
I just had one question about the cities. Have you gone out to the cities and presented this, and what was their?
So we spent the last year meeting with all the cities, and we spoke to both the mayors and the city councils at their opportunity. We had full support from all the cities with lots of questions from the city of Warrenton, but we did feel that some cities actually wanted to pass it right then. That was too soon for us because we didn't actually have an ordinance yet, but they're fully supportive from our understanding.
All the cities?
Yeah.
Very good.
Can I add the fact that, as the liaison to the health department, I've been following this process very carefully, and I'm super impressed with the research that these folks did on best practices. I feel very confident that this is an ordinance that is way ahead of local ordinances in other places. And the cities were at first a little difficult to get on their agenda. But I called the mayors and said, get us on your agenda. Within a week, we were on everybody's agenda. So, and we have told them that we will be coming back and give me, Mike, I have a mental block against this phrase. What is it called? That they pass an ordinance.
They can adopt it by reference.
By reference. So they will actually be taking their own legal action to adopt our ordinance by reference. So looks good. They all promised, they all said, yep, we're on it.
They all said yes.
They all said yes, and they were really every city was very supportive.
City of Gerhart actually wanted to do an emergency declaration that night, but we said, well, that might be a little fast, so.
And may I just say, for someone who's recovering from a respiratory virus, we need to do all we can to protect our lungs.
I also want to thank Commissioner Webb for her leadership in helping us get to the cities. We were having some trouble getting on their agenda. And especially a thanks to my staff, Julia Hess and Jill Quackenbush and Catherine Crombie and Bridget Blakesley, who couldn't make it here tonight. They were really the one. This is a testament to their forward thinking and dedication to tobacco prevention in Clatsop County.
Hooray. Well done.
Good cheers all around, yeah.
Yes. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay, may we have the first reading by title only?
Shoot. This ordinance shall be called in a matter of licensing retail sales of tobacco products.
I will now open the public hearing. Please come forward, give your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Bill Van Nostrand, 92027 Glasgow Drive, Astoria, Oregon, 97103. It seems like I don't need to add any more enthusiasm, but I just wanted you to know that for the last couple of years, I have volunteered with a community leader, business leader, and county health staff task force called Prevention Works, specifically designed to raise awareness to the risks of underage use of substances and to educate in the local schools that same kind of information. Fortunately, our work has now come under the umbrella of the CHART County Health Task Force, but through my volunteer work and the awareness created by county staff, I just want to add my voice to your passage of this ordinance. I'm specifically interested in shoring up any and all rules that might prevent bad actors from being lax in their enforcement of the Tobacco 21 laws. And I'm also interested in curtailing and or restricting the attractiveness of tobacco and other retail products, both displayed at eye level for children and in bright colors and flavors, so that they can be introduced to this practice at a very early age. Given that after the federal government slapped the hands of tobacco producing companies severely, given the fact that they all changed their names, so it appears like they've gone out of business, but they haven't. And what's the new name for Philip Morris? Altria. And then Altria bought Juul, the primary producer of vaping products. You know, if you can't let me kill people this way, I will surreptitiously kill them another way. I just hope that at a local level we will do whatever we can to protect our own. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Brooke Stanley, 488 Lexington Avenue in Astoria. I'm here in my new role as the Columbia Pacific CCO Community Health Improvement Coordinator for Clatsop County. And I'm here in support of this, passing this ordinance. Columbia Pacific CCO has been working on tobacco cessation for several years. We are the insurance provider for Oregon Health Plan members in this area, and this is a top priority for us. And this is one of our strategic initiatives for implementing our 5-year regional health improvement plan, and we would like to see it passed. And as an individual member of this community with children or a child and one more on the way, I'm looking forward to having more protection for our children, not just mine, but for when we do these policy level changes, it makes a difference for everyone. And at Columbia Pacific CCO, that type of equity and preventing access, especially to youth, for these addictive things at the policy level so that it really is helping everyone. I think it's really important, and Columbia Pacific CCO and Care Oregon have backed it and are interested in seeing it go through. So good job, and good job to staff.
Citizen Julia.
I'm Julia Hess. I live at 810 Florence Avenue in Astoria, 97103. So you've heard everything from me, but I just wanted to add a little bit more. I just came back from a national convention on tobacco or health, and I learned one new thing about flavors, but we've known for years that tobacco companies have always used flavors to attract kids, and there's over 15,000 different flavors for vaping products. One of the things I learned about it, one of the top-selling vaping products is called Unicorn Vomit. And you can imagine what the cartoon character looks like. It's vomiting rainbows. Clearly, this is not for adults that are trying to quit smoking. And I want to read something that Monica shared with us. She took it a step further. This is the product description of Unicorn Vomit. This is one of our best sellers at our retail store. Imagine you're 9 and your mom lets you get whatever you wanted at the store, and you chose the most sugar-filled sour powder you could find. The kind that stains your tongue blue and bites at the back of your mouth with a sweet and sour punch. With hints of fruit and candy afternotes, it'll bring out your inner child. This juice will need steeping and airing out, even after delivery, to bring out the fullest flavor. So if that doesn't tell you that they're not trying to keep adults from smoking, but they're actually addicting kids, I don't know what will. So I just wanted to share that. And thank you so much for all of your support. And thank you, Monica.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this public hearing? If not, I will close the public hearing and, no, excuse me, I will continue the hearing to September 25th. Let's take a 5-minute break. please come back to the dais? No, it's all right. So, next is our business agenda. And we have Northwest Oregon Area Commission on Transportation appointment. Do we have
Sorry, I'm trying to find my page.
staff?
Yeah. Oh, there it is. So it was brought to our attention by Commissioner Thompson a couple months ago that the Northwest Area Commission on Transportation has a vacancy for a citizen-at-large position. When we went to go about the process of appointing that, it was determined that we needed to make this a public process, and so we advertised for the position. This position represents Clatsop, Columbia, and Tillamook counties and portions of Washington County. And so the membership has 8 seats, which includes citizens at large, 2 per county, and there is currently a vacancy for our Clatsop County position. And we had a total of 5 applicants. Their names, I don't want to say them incorrectly, but they're presented before you. And so at this point in time, we're asking for the board to select an applicant to appoint to the vacant seat.
So, Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
I would move,
Excuse me, Commissioner Sullivan.
yeah?
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Ronald Bline as citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County in the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation.
Is there a second?
No. I'll second that for the purposes of discussion.
Okay, any discussion?
Madam Chair, if I could speak to this. I've been the representative to Colpack and Northwest Act since I came on the County Board of Commissioners. During that time, I've worked with Jim Knight as the person who has not only been active on Northwest Act, but he's been active statewide, chairing the Aviation Commission, which is very important. It's a responsible position. Mr. Knight has left the Port of Astoria. If he were appointed to this position, then he would be able to continue doing the work that he has done so well. In my mind, he's the incumbent. He knows how to do the work. He has done the work. He's an asset not only in Clatsop County and regionally, but across the state. And for that reason, I will be voting against the appointment of anyone else. And further, Mary MacArthur, who is staff to Northwest Act and Colpack, has asked specifically that this commission act to continue to support the work of Northwest Act and aviation across Oregon by making effective use of the skills that Mr. Knight possesses. I checked with the chair of the Port of Astoria Commission, Frank Spence, at that time, because this has been lagging for a couple of months. He had no objection whatsoever. In fact, he was very enthusiastic about having Mr. Knight continue in this role. For that reason, let me reiterate, I will be voting against anyone except Mr. Knight to fill that position. I do note that we are blessed with some very fine candidates who have brought themselves forward. I would hope that we would keep track in a database of citizens like this so that we can make use of them in other regards. Almost every district was represented, so this was a heartwarming example of citizens across the county volunteering to be of service. So I hope that we capture their names and use them effectively going forward in some citizen advisory capacity. This, however, is a very specific position related to a specific set of skills. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
I just, I think, I don't know all of the candidates here, and it looks like, looking through their applications, resumes, that we do have a lot of qualified candidates for this. I'm familiar with Jim Knight and his work at the Port of Astoria, so I will be supporting him.
So the person that you nominated, that you recommended, what was the name?
Ronald Blind.
That's what I thought.
But I think you make excellent points, both of you. And I know it's not an easy decision. If it was my choice, I would have these people be brought in front of the board itself and have them decide who they want to. We get an appointment because this position is being appointed. Why?
There's a current vacancy for the member at large or the citizen at large position.
There's also a vacancy statewide in aviation because Mr. Knight, if he isn't given this position, if he isn't appointed to this position by us, there's a vacancy there. So there is a vacuum in the state that would need to be filled.
Can I ask a question about that? Is Mr. Knight in this, the State Aviation Committee?
Mr. Knight's actually in the audience. Perhaps he would be better. He should come forward and answer these questions. He's much more qualified than I in that regard.
I'm not going to do that right now, I
Well,
don't think.
fine then.
Yeah, no, my question is, you implied that Mr. Knight chairs an aviation committee at the state level? Is that what you were saying, Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember the exact details, so I apologize. That's why I asked for help. Sorry that
And
Mr. Knight won't be allowed
does
to
he chair
specify.
that by virtue of the fact that he has been on Northwest Act?
Indeed.
Okay,
That's exactly correct.
That's the thing, okay.
This just continues him with Northwest Act, but in a different role.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so, well, I looked at these as well, and this person that Commissioner Sullivan recommended, certainly, I mean, he has experience in transportation. Okay, so it's moved and seconded that Ronald Blind be appointed as a citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County on the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation. An aye vote will appoint Mr. Blind. A no vote will, the motion will fail. So the pending question is, shall Ronald Blind be appointed as a citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County on the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation? The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Nay.
Commissioner Thompson?
Nay.
Commissioner Aquila?
Nay.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye. So the ayes are 2 and the noes are 3. So the motion fails.
Madam Chair, I move to appoint Jim Knight as a citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County on the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation.
I'll second.
It is moved and seconded that Jim Knight be appointed as a citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County on the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation. An aye vote will appoint Mr. Knight. A no vote will not appoint Mr. Knight. So it is moved, no, excuse me, so the motion is to appoint Mr. Knight as a citizen-at-large representative for Clatsop County on the Northwest Oregon Commission on Transportation. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Aquila?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
No.
Commissioner Nebaker?
No. Mr. Knight is appointed. All right. Now, we come to good of the order.
Madam Chair, I had some folks from the North Coast Land Conservancy reach out and say that they would like the board's support in their application for to the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. And this is just kind of a rough draft, but we could work on it some more. Application for acquisition of the Rainforest Reserve in Arch Cape would help if Clatsop County would support that. So it talks about Goal 4, the forest land, protecting a forest and keeping a forest healthy. Goal 5, open spaces, scenic and historic and natural resources. Goal 6, air, water, and land conservancy, air quality, and Goal 8, recreational needs. These are all on our comprehensive plan. So what they hope to do, and maybe Commissioner Thompson can talk more about this is down her district, about what they want to do, and they're hoping that we can get the board's support with that. And I think they have a deadline coming up in October. So if we were to have a consensus on this, that we could get one written and submit it to them. So I was just wondering what you all think about that.
Can I ask one question? So what is their deadline in October? Because I'm scheduled to go in October on a tour, October 24.
A tour of this, what their project is?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
Okay. 'Cause I was hoping to see it and get the tour.
Yeah, I think I'm going on that tour too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can reach out to them and find out some more information. But Commissioner,
I'd like to be able to do that first before I'm.
You actually want to see what you're buying?
Yeah. Well, we're not
buying anything, we're just recommending. Commissioner Thompson, do you have anything more you'd like to add to this? or-
I'm in support of the North Coast Land Conservancy as an individual and as a commissioner, because I think that what they're doing, we were just in the Arch Cape Fire Hall today, and there's a big map on the wall. There's a banner that says, 2 projects, 1 mission, and it shows that what they want to do is take responsibility for managing their own watershed. So they're going to have to operate a working forest. They're going to have to look at water quality issues. They're going to have to look at protecting their own environment in a very responsible way. And however we can support them, I want to do that in a way that's fiscally prudent and ethical.
So maybe we can get something written up, we can communicate with them and find out when their deadline is, and maybe have something on the agenda for the last meeting of this month. Does that seem reasonable to you folks?
Depending on what.
Or do you want to wait until after you see the tour? What do you say?
Well, I'd like to. I mean, I guess you can find out what their deadline is.
Okay, I guess I wasn't tracking there. So if the tour is in October, then maybe the deadline is
The
after
tour,
that.
the October 24th tour is a second chance. Because, isn't it? Because at first they offered us a tour, and it was when I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah, and I am too, and he said
So
that October 24th was the last one that they could do.
Right, so.
I'll give them a call and find
Okay,
out.
yeah.
And then I'll send an email to Monica.
I can call him too, yeah. I can find out
Okay.
exactly.
I mean, I'm very much in favor. I actually don't need October 24th tour to happen to support their program. I mean, I would still be willing to.
But that is fair, and I'm happy to reach out.
Okay, cool. Cool. I'm sorry, is that a parliamentary?
You said you had something for the...
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries has been dealing with emergency preparedness and preparation for catastrophic events for quite some time. It's a great mission. They have wonderful staff. They've been very effective. What's been lacking, I think, has been kind of that administrative structure that manages an agency well. And I don't want to cast stones at anybody, but legislature's been concerned because they haven't managed their budgets well. That's distinct, in my mind, from the work that they've done. So now Linda Kozlowski, who's director of the or chair of the board, I can't remember what her official title is, with the Nehalem Bay Emergency Volunteer Corps, but again, nationally, internationally known as being an excellent community emergency preparedness person, has reached out and said, please, I'm going to testify before the legislature, help us hold Dogami together so that it operates as a single unified agency, so that it can continue to act effectively to protect Oregonians. I'm for that. I want to do that. I would like all of us to also support effective fiscal oversight of a unified Department of Geology and Mineral Industries.
What's the state wants them to be defunded because of fiscal problems?
They don't want to defund them, they want to chop them up and scatter them in other agencies, because they haven't, as an agency, been able to operate within their budget. I mean, it happens.
I don't know enough about this.
My
Okay.
only comment is that I know that we worked with Dugami in a number of capacities at the city of Warrenton with varying success. Sometimes it was very responsive and they were great. Sometimes we didn't get things for a long period of time and they were hard to get a hold of and frankly wasn't satisfactory. So
Yeah.
I think it's been, just my personal experience that there haven't always been the most functional organization. So I guess I'd have to find out a little bit more about what's being proposed. I'm just not aware of what they're considering doing. Yeah.
And I understand mixed results. I do, I understand mixed results. My experience, I worked for them. They actually paid me a while ago to get out those maps. So I worked with the scientists and the engineers and all of them. That project worked well. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. Some of the other stuff maybe doesn't work as well. I think that Dogami's functions are critical to be done well. I think we need those earthquake engineers. I think we need those catastrophic, and I think we need them all together in one agency, not scattered, because my concern is that when the expertise is in a variety of agencies, the impact is diluted, and I'm afraid that going forward, our experience would be worse because they would be scattered.
I just don't know enough about that.
And I can understand that. I can respect that. I'm going to say something on my own because I'm comfortable saying that, but I want you to know what's going on and offer you the opportunity to be part of it.
Okay.
So thanks for sharing your experience. Sure.
Okay, do we have anything else?
I just would say, I mentioned it last time because Jed was here from Hampton, but Body Vox at Big Creek, September 14th, 6 o'clock, celebrating its 22nd season. So they're touring all over, and this is a special performance out at Big Creek with the dance troupe Body Vox.
Where is this at?
It's out at Big...
No, I mean, when is that? I was meant to
Saturday
say.
14th from 6 to 7 o'clock.
September 14th?
September, so it's this Saturday.
Oh, that's why I'm not,
Yeah, this Saturday.
I'm not going to be.
So I have a question about the, the Arch Cape Fire Hall for the meeting on Friday?
Yep, there's a meeting Friday
Right.
from 10 until
but
2.
How do I find that?
The Arch Cape Fire Hall?
Yeah.
It's a be there joke. If you belong there, you actually know where it is already. No, I'm kidding. If you want the address,
Yes.
I can tell you how to get there. The address isn't on the top of my head. When you come down south into Arch Cape, there's the cannon beside the road.
The
So
what?
the next driveway after that, to the left. But I'll send out an email with the
Okay, good.
actual address. 10 to 2 is the AOC District 7 meeting. Senator Johnson will be there. Representative Mitchell will be there. 2:30, there will be a tour of the Arch Cape Forest Project. So, interested in coming on the project? Want to see the Arch Cape Forest? Yes or no, please, so we know how many.
I've already told them I'm
I
not.
already said I couldn't make it.
Okay, good. All right.
I can be there from 10 till 2, I think.
10 till 2. The tour is from 2:30 till 4.
Yeah. Well, I can probably do one or the other, but I'm not sure yet. I'd appreciate an address, because
Okay.
looked online, couldn't find it.
It's,
It's on Google
It's
Maps.
72979 US 101.
72979
79 US 101.
Okay,
When heading south, it's on the left-hand side of the road, and it's 26 miles from here.
all right. Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, meeting adjourned. Jeez, you scared